Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So yesterday you might have seen my episode on the initial 2 cards that were shown for the Stranger Things Secret Lair. Now on that episode I also reiterated my opinion on products such as this one. So if you want to hear my opinion on products such as this one, and if you want to see what those cards are, make sure you check that episode out at some point. On this episode, I'm not going to be talking about my opinion on these kinds of products. I'm just going to be talking about the new cards that we've seen, the remaining cards from the Stranger Things Secret Lair. We've got 6 new commanders to go over, so I'm going to give you my thoughts on the actual commanders and what kinds of cards you might want to use if you're building a deck around this commander, or if you're waiting for the Magic version of these cards to come out, which should be in about 6 months or so, or, if you just want to, well, ask your play group right now if you can play with them and proxy these cards so you don't actually have to buy the Secret Lair. Regardless though, let's jump into the commanders and what they do. First up, we've got Mind Flayer the Shadow, a 9/9 legendary enchantment creature horror that costs 4 black. It has Mind Flayer the Shadow isn't a creature unless you control 3 or more permanents you don't own. So the first part is kind of like a Theros God and Agent Treachery kind of combined. Even though this is a 9/9, not being a creature can definitely come in handy. Again, with that you can avoid a lot of board wipes and target removal like Path to Exile. But obviously having a 9/9 on the board as well can be very impactful too, and yeah, meeting that requirement isn't going to be very hard with this commander. It says at the beginning of your end step, exile the bottom card of each opponent's library face down. For as long as those cards remain exiled, you may look at them, you may cast permanent spells from among them, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast those spells. So yeah, you're essentially stealing things off the bottom of your opponent's libraries. Now obviously there are limitations with that, in that it does say cast, not play, so you actually can't use lands. On top of that, again, it's only permanent spells, so if someone's got a lot of instants and sorceries and you keep hitting those, well, you're not getting any value out of that. Regardless, yeah, that can still be quite powerful. This commander can essentially give you a separate hand in that face down pile from your opponent's libraries. And yeah, again, if you're lucky and every single player has a non-land permanent on the bottom of their library, well, you're basically drawing 3 extra cards in a turn. And since this allows you to use any mana to cast those spells, well, again, mana fixing doesn't matter, which is great because you're in mono black. Regardless if you're going to build around Mind Flayer, or again the magic version of it, or again the proxied version that you make of this card, here are some cards to consider. First up, I would most definitely utilize cards like Rito Lantern, Junk Troller, and Vessel of Endless Rest. Rito Lantern has pay 3, put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. This basically turns your opponent's graveyards into an all-you-can-eat buffet. Okay, that's probably not a great comparison, but that's what came to mind. Essentially, any non-land permanent in your opponent's graveyards now is basically a target for you to just put on the bottom of their library, and then you get access to that. And then obviously, Junk Troller can also help with this as well. It has tap put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. So though this one doesn't cost mana, it's not repeatable obviously unless you've got a way to untap it. And we even have a mana rock that can help with this too, well at least once, with Vessel of Endless Rest. It has when it enters the battlefield, put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library, and it can tap to add 1 mana of any color. So yeah, even a one-off effect like this though can be very impactful again if the right non-land permanent is in an opponent's library. Next up, you can really lean heavily into this stealing your opponent's stuff thing with something like Thieving Amalgam. It has at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library. Whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Keep in mind though that with this in play, it's going to essentially make sure that your commander is basically active most of the time. That being said, obviously this can help you steal even more of your opponent's important things, and obviously punish them as well when those creatures die. And yeah, again, like I mentioned before, having a 9/9 in play is not a bad thing. But again, you also might want to consider that you really don't want your commander to be a creature all that often, or at least that you have the option to make it not a creature. So maybe you want to utilize a card like Claws of Gix that has pay 1, sacrifice a permanent, you gain 1 life. So yeah, with this you can easily play with the number of permanents that you control but don't own. And actually this can be really impactful with ETBs and LTBs from your opponent's things. For example, let's say that you got your opponent's Avenger of Zendikar out, well, you could just sacrifice this, get it back on the bottom of your opponent's library again with something like Junk Troller, and then, recast it for even more plant tokens. And of course, with this kind of a commander, you're going to want a ton of mana, and again, it doesn't matter what kind of mana that is, so yeah, big mana rocks like Dreamstone Hedron can come in really handy. The more mana that you've got access to, the more things that you can steal from your opponents. Next up, we've got Mike the Dungeon Master, and good call, Eddie. Eddie actually guessed correctly that it was going to be a Selesnya commander, and we'll get to why that is here in a bit. First off, Mike the Dungeon Master is a 2/2 human for 1 green-white. By paying 2, you tap and choose target creature card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn, return to the battlefield tapped, and it's got Friends Forever, which yeah, I'm still not used to actually saying. This just absolutely amazing name for a mechanic means that you can have 2 commanders if both have Friends Forever. Basically, it's kind of like a shrunk down version of Partner because it's going to be a smaller pool than just the Partner pool at large. And yeah, the reason that it was guessed that this would be a Selesnya commander is because Mike, when paired with 11, is a 5-color deck. And yeah, technically, again, these aren't partner commanders because they don't say partner, but yeah, they basically are partner commanders because you can get 2 of them, and this would be the very first ever 5-color combination between 2, basically, again, partner commanders. Regardless, when it comes to these commanders, I'm not going to talk about every single combination because that would take far too long, so I'm just going to basically talk about kind of what cards within this commander's color identity, although again, you're going to be able to get access to more than just that, can actually work really well with it. So obviously, Mike can get back your other commander if you let it go to the graveyard. But of course, with this commander, you can also use and abuse some creatures that have some very powerful ETBs like Sun Titan, Terracodon, and Bane of Progress. Sun Titan has, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you can get even more things back with Sun Titan, and then you can get Sun Titan back with, your commander, so yeah, a lot of value there. And then Terracodon has a massive ETB. When it enters the battlefield, it may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. For each permanent put into a graveyard this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. And speaking of taking things out, of course, there's Bane of Progress, which has, when it enters the battlefield, destroy all artifacts and enchantments, but a +1 counter on Bane of Progress for each permanent destroyed this way. So this can become massive and take out a ton of things, and again, if you've got a lot of creatures in your deck and not too many artifacts or enchantments, this is going to affect you too much. Next up, though, let's talk about Karmic Guide, Avenger of Zendikar, and Greater Good. Karmic Guide can be fantastic with this commander because Karmic Guide has Echo, so basically you have to sacrifice it unless you pay the Echo cost, which you won't on your next upkeep because, well, actually going to your graveyard is going to be a good thing, so you can get it back with your commander to get the ETB again, which is, when it enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, Mike has the restriction that you can only get a creature from your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn, but Karmic Guide obviously has no such restriction. So get back whatever you want. And then Avenger of Zendikar has, when it enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. And of course, landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield on your control, you may put a +1 counter on each plant you control. So keep getting this out and getting more plants, then getting more counters on them, then get this out again and get more plants, get more counters on them. You see where this is going. And of course, with this commander, you're probably going to want to utilize some fantastic sacrifice outlets like Greater Good. Greater Good says sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, then discard 3 cards. So yeah, again, especially with something like Terracodon, you can draw a massive amount of cards, and then with your commander, get it right back to abuse its ETB again. And then, sacrifice it again and discard a couple cards. After you draw, 9 cards? Yeah, 9 cards to discard 3? I'll take that. But next up, let's talk about Will the Wise. Will is a 1/2 human for white-black, and he has, when he enters or leaves the battlefield, each opponent may investigate. Each opponent who doesn't loses 1 life. You investigate X times, where X is 1 plus the number of opponents who investigated this way. So basically, you are incentivizing your opponents to investigate by, well, punishing them if they don't. Players can either get a clue and give you a clue in the process, or they can lose 1 life. And again, at the very least, when Will enters or leaves the battlefield, you're going to be getting a clue. And yeah, if each of your opponents decides to give you a clue in a multiplayer game like Commander, where there are 4 players, Yeah, that's a ton of clues on entering or leaving the battlefield. That's 4 clues each time that happens. So if you blink this just once, again, it's going to be leaving the battlefield, so that's a trigger, and then coming back into the battlefield, which is a trigger. So yeah, you can essentially get 8 clues with 1 blink spell. Or, even more with a blink spell like Ephemerate, because you get to cast it twice because it's got rebound. So again, by exiling Will and then returning to the battlefield back under its owner's control, which again is you're going to get that trigger twice. And again, if your opponents all decide to take a clue, you are getting 8 clues in total. And then you do it again next turn with that rebound. So for just 1 mana with this commander, you've got the potential to get 16 clues. And of course, a repeatable blink effect like Conjurer's Closet can really come in handy as well. It says at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So yeah, repeatable blink effects like this can provide you a ton of value throughout the game. And yeah, although I did say I wouldn't talk about cards outside of the specific color identity for the commander, yeah, with this one, I would definitely partner it up with one that has at least blue. Blue has a ton of blink spells as well, and it's got a ton of artifact synergies too. Regardless, in these colors also, you get access to something like Malakir Rebirth, which can be fantastic. It says choose target creature, you lose 2 life until end of turn that creature gains. When this creature dies, returns to the battlefield, tapped under its owner's control. So, though this isn't a blink effect, obviously it works in a similar way. If your commander is going to die, well, you're just going to be getting it back. And again, you get that leave the battlefield trigger and the enter the battlefield trigger again. Next up, you can get even more absurd value with something like Academy Manufacturer. It says if you'd create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create 1 of each. So, yeah, now every single time you get a clue, you get a food and a treasure token on top of that, and the treasure token, obviously, can be incredibly impactful, basically just getting you free mana. And speaking of free mana, well, Krark Clan Ironworks, though it's an expensive card, would definitely work very well with this commander. It says sacrifice an artifact, add 2 to your mana pool. So, yeah, instead of paying mana to sacrifice those clues to draw cards, well, you can just sacrifice those clues for mana. And while you're sacrificing those clues, you can also drain out your opponents with something like Marionette Master. It's got Fabricate 3, and whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So, yeah, basically, if you with that Fabricate 3, get 3 counters on this, that's 4 power and 4 life drained every single time you sacrifice a clue. So, yeah, this commander has a lot of potential. But now let's move on to Lucas the Sharpshooter. Lucas is a 1/3 human for blue-red, and he has tap, sacrifice an artifact. Lucas the Sharpshooter deals 1 damage to target creature, goad that creature. And of course, friends forever. So yeah, Lucas is basically a Tim, and for those of you that don't know what a Tim is, it's basically a creature that taps to ping something for 1 damage. Regardless, Lucas is a bit different in that in order to actually ping something, you need to sacrifice an artifact, but you also get a huge benefit in that when you ping that creature, it is goaded. Which again means that until your next turn, that creature attacks each combat of Fable and attacks a player other than you of Fable. So yeah, being able to goad specific creatures can be very impactful. It can be a form of removal if an opponent has a key creature in play, and well, if they're attacking another player is basically going to get that creature taken out. Or if someone's got a giant creature in play as well, you're sending that at another opponent to dish out some damage too. Now, obviously, Lucas partners very well with, again, a commander like Will that can make a ton of artifact tokens. But yeah, there are plenty of other artifacts that can work well with Lucas. For example, utilizing artifacts like Implement of Combustion, Ichor Wellspring, and Ugin's Nexus that actually want to be sacrificed, yeah, you can get a lot of value out of these. Implement of Combustion has, when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So yeah, for basically 1 mana, this is a cantrip with Lucas. And then Ichor Wellspring has, when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So yeah, again with Lucas, this is pay 2 mana, draw 2 cards, which is pretty good. And speaking of pretty good, actually this is really good, Ugin's Nexus obviously is fantastic with Lucas. It has, if a player begins an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead, but if it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile and take an extra turn after this one. So yeah, an artifact that, when it's in play prevents your opponents from having extra turns, that's great. And when you sacrifice it with Lucas, you get an extra turn. So yeah, make sure you're on the lookout for artifacts that actually want to be sacrificed with Lucas. On top of that, obviously, you can just include artifacts that make a lot of other artifacts, like a Mirror Battlesphere. So yeah, when Mirror Battlesphere enters the battlefield, you get 4 Mirror tokens, and yeah, basically you've got 5 pieces of fodder that you can sacrifice to Lucas. And obviously, being able to activate Lucas more than once each turn can be huge as well, so Chakram Retriever can be great. It has whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap target creature. So yeah, basically, tap Lucas, sacrifice something, ping something for 1, goad it, cast a spell, untap Lucas, do it again, and again, and again. And then Pia's Revolution can really provide you a lot of value as well. It says, whenever a non-token artifact is put in your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless target opponent has Pia's Revolution, deal 3 damage to them. So obviously you can pick an opponent that's not willing to get pinged by this because maybe they've got less life, or you just make some deals with opponents and say, hey, if you let me get this artifact back, I won't go to any of your creatures right now. Regardless, yeah, Lucas is definitely a very interesting Tim commander. But now let's move on to Max the Daredevil, a 3/2 human with haste that costs 1 red-green. She has, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, untap target creature, then investigate. And of course, friends forever. I'm still never going to get used to that. Anyways, Max benefits you whenever you're casting your second spell each turn. You get to untap a creature and investigate, so again, even more clues. But yeah, obviously this commander is going to benefit you by casting multiple spells in a turn. Again, 2 is the correct number, and yeah, untapping a creature can be, well, very impactful. Obviously, that's kind of like a pseudo form of vigilance, if you're looking to attack with a creature and still have it back for blocking, but more importantly, I think you want to focus on activated abilities that require tapping a creature. So the first place that my mind went, obviously, in this color combination, are mana dorks like Zertod Druid and Karametra's Acolyte. Zertod Druid helps us out in multiple ways. You can tap a green, and whenever you tap it for mana, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So we can utilize that mana that we're making to help cast more spells again, and when we get that second spell cast, we get to untap it, and we can just ping opponents twice in a turn. But obviously, a mana dork with a higher threshold like Karametra's Acolyte can be really impactful with this too. It can tap to add an amount of green to your mana pool equal to your devotion to green. So yeah, this can obviously tap for a ton of mana, and then again, just by casting your second spell in a turn with some of that mana, you can then untap it and tap it again for even more mana. Or you can utilize a tapper for a different purpose with Kamal Pitfighter. It's a 6/1 human barbarian with haste that has tap, it deals 3 damage to our creature or player. So yeah, being able to tap this and then untap it and tap it again, that's 6 total damage, which can take out most creatures out there, and yeah, can really take down opponents. And speaking of taking out creatures, something like Ulvenwald Tracker has a good activate ability as well. Pay 1 in the green and tap, target creature you control fights another target creature. And then obviously something like Fauna Shaman can be incredibly impactful in this deck. Pay a green and tap to discard a creature card, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle your library. So yeah, have fun tutoring twice in a turn with this. And yeah, of course, although this probably wouldn't be a Goblin tribal deck, most likely, Krenko Mob Boss could fit right in. He has tap, create X/1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X the number of goblins you control. So by tapping this, you basically double the number of goblins in play, then you can untap it with your commander, and then tap it again, and double again, and yeah, have fun with all of that. So yeah, being able to use and abuse your creature's tap effects can be incredibly impactful, and obviously getting some clue tokens with that is nice as well. And last, and certainly least, in my opinion, I am very sorry, Dustin, Gadget Genius. Dustin is a 2/3 human for 2 white blue, and he has tap, add colorless, spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activated abilities of artifacts, and of course, friends forever. There's really not much to say at all about Dustin and kind of what deck you'd build around. Obviously, focusing on artifacts, woo. And actually, I think pretty much all the other commanders have been appropriately costed so far, but Dustin, I think, probably should have cost 3. I mean, I know it's technically a partner commander, but this isn't really all that impactful of an effect. Again, just basically a very specific mana dork. So yeah, I think this is definitely the weakest out of all of the new commanders. I mean, it's just basically like a worse version of Dalico's Crafter of Wonders. I mean, okay, technically it's better again because, again, in combination with another one of those Friends Forever commanders, obviously it is better because it's going to be, brought up by the other one, and you've got access to 2 commanders, but still. If you're looking for cards that might work well with Dustin, well, maybe just check out Dalicos' page on EDH Rec or something. Artifacts. Yay. Regardless, again, that is my take on the new Stranger Things commanders that we got from this secret lair. And again, like me, if you don't want to support these mechanically unique card secret lairs that are sold directly from WotC, but you still like these commanders, that's completely okay. Again, you can either wait for the Magic versions to come out and support that, or, you can just ask your playgroup if a proxy is okay and proxy these, and now you can just play them right now if you want to. But again, do whatever you would like. It is your decision to make. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one.